Welcome back to Midnight Pasta. Tonight's tale may follow you into your dreams. Subscribe if you haven't already. It helps keep the lights off and the chills on. I wasn't supposed to be out there that late, but you know how it is. Once you grow up in a town that backs up to miles of old forest, the trees don't feel threatening. They feel like home. Or at least they did, until last fall. My name's Daniel. I grew up in a sleepy New England town called Mason Hill. Not on any maps unless you squint, and even then you'll probably miss it. There's not much to it. One gas station, 2 churches, a post office that closes at 4, and woods so thick you can hear them breathe if you're quiet enough. People there either work at the paper mill or not at all. It's the kind of place you leave if you can. I worked maintenance at the high school. Nothing glamorous. Mostly sweeping gym floors and unclogging toilets after football practice. But it paid the bills, and more importantly, it kept me close to the house I grew up in. My parents passed within a year of each other, and I inherited the place. Big, creaky, built in the 40s. The kind of house where every draft feels like a whisper. Behind it ran the woods, miles of them. Now, they always had their stories. It's not just urban legends either. People really did vanish in those woods. Not often. Once every 5-10 years. Hikers, hunters, teenagers dumb enough to go looking for the devil's nest. That's what we called the thickest part of the forest, where even GPS signals die. Cops would search, dogs would bark, helicopters would circle, but nothing ever came back. No bodies, no gear. I never gave it much thought. I mean, that stuff happens everywhere, right? Nature's not just beautiful, it's brutal. But then came the night I saw the man standing at the boundary tree. It was a Thursday, early October. The kind of night where the cold starts to really set in and the wind has a bite to it. I was out on my back porch, drinking a beer and half listening to an old true crime podcast I'd already heard 3 times. The woods were quiet. No wind, no crickets. Just silence, thick like syrup. That's when I noticed it. There's this old, gnarled oak at the edge of my property, right where my lawn ends and the woods begin. We always called it the boundary tree. It's twisted in a weird way, like it tried to grow in one direction, changed its mind, and grew in another. My dad used to say it marked where the wild began. I always liked that. But that night, someone was standing at it. At first I thought it was his shadow, the way the porch light spilled out into the yard. It could have just been a trick of the eye, but the longer I stared, the clearer it got. It was a man, tall, dressed in dark, ragged clothes, just standing there, motionless, right at the edge of the woods, like he was waiting for something. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. I just sat there, watching him, heart thudding, slow and heavy. He didn't step forward, didn't wave, didn't even tilt his head, just stood at the boundary tree, staring. Or at least, I think he was staring. His face was hard to make out, like the shadows clung to it more than they should have. I must have blinked, just once, and he was gone. No sound, no movement. 1 second there, the next, nothing. Just the empty edge of the woods and the silhouette of that twisted old tree. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak in the house felt louder, every gust of wind like it carried a voice. The next day I convinced myself it was a trick of the light, or maybe someone passing through, a drifter, a hunter. It happens. I let it go. Or tried to. But over the next week, I started noticing things. Footprints in the dirt just past my back fence. Big ones. Barefoot. Who walks barefoot in October? Animals began avoiding the yard. I'd see squirrels and birds freeze at the edge of the lawn, then scurry off like something unseen had hissed at them. Then came the scratching. It started faint, like something dragging nails along the wood siding of the house. I thought it was a raccoon. I left out traps. Nothing caught. The sound kept coming. Later at night, longer, more deliberate. Then, one night, I heard it just outside my bedroom window, 2nd floor. I didn't even want to look. But I did. And what I saw made my blood run cold. There were handprints, pale, long-fingered handprints smeared across the outside of the glass, like someone had pressed their face and palms against it, watching me sleep. But no ladder, no mud on the ground, just handprints, and that heavy silence that seems to follow you into your dreams. I told myself I was being paranoid, that stress was getting to me. Maybe I needed to take a few days off, drive out to the coast, let the forest breathe without me for a bit. But then, the final straw. I found a note on my porch. No envelope, just a folded piece of yellowed paper, damp from the morning dew. I almost didn't open it. When I did, my hands started shaking. The woods remember. You shouldn't. That was all it said. No signature, no context. And behind the words, faint like water damage, were finger smears. Thin, long, just like the ones on the glass. I think someone is trying to bring me into the woods. And I think I might have already been. I've started remembering things that don't fit. Places that don't exist on any map. Dreams that feel more like memories. There's something out there. Something old. And it doesn't like being forgotten. The human brain is a strange thing. It stores trauma in little boxes and tucks them away, hoping you'll never open them. But the forest doesn't forget. And lately, I've started to think, maybe I opened one of those boxes a long time ago without realizing it. Or maybe something opened it for me. After the note, I stopped going outside at night, kept the porch light on, pulled the blinds tight, but it didn't matter. Whatever was watching me wasn't waiting for an invitation. It had already been inside. I started having dreams, not normal ones, vivid, tangible, like I could smell the damp moss and feel the cool dirt under my fingernails. In these dreams, I was walking a narrow trail through the woods, always the same one. A path flanked by old trees whose branches twisted into shapes that almost looked like faces. I wasn't alone. There were others ahead of me, walking silently, men, women, some kids, all barefoot, all heading somewhere deeper. And always at the front of the line, there was a man in a long, dark coat. I never saw his face, but I recognized his silhouette, the same one I saw standing at the boundary tree. The dreams ended the same way every time, with me standing in a clearing, surrounded by stones carved with symbols I didn't recognize, and a whisper behind me, so close I could feel the breath on my neck. You came back. I'd wake up gasping, heart pounding, sheets damp with sweat. After the third night, I went digging through my attic. I don't know why. Something told me I'd find something up there, something I wasn't supposed to remember. The attic hadn't changed since my parents died. Dust, cobwebs, the stale scent of forgotten years. I opened box after box, old toys, high school yearbooks, my dad's tool belt, and then, at the very back, tucked under a moth-eaten tarp, I found it. A small metal lockbox, no label. Just a rusty latch and a strange, almost organic scent, like wet bark and decayed leaves. The key was taped to the bottom. Inside was a photo. Old, faded, edges curled from time. It showed a group of people, 7 of them, standing in the woods, all facing the camera, all barefoot. I dropped it the second I saw my own face in the group. I was maybe 16, dirty, tired, smiling but not happy. The others were unfamiliar, but something about them twisted my gut. One of the girls had her eyes closed like she was listening to something no one else could hear. Another kid, couldn't have been more than 12, was holding a small bundle of twigs shaped like a man. And behind us, barely visible in the trees, was a figure. Tall, long coat, no face. The photo shook in my hands. I tried to remember that moment. That day, nothing, just static. I flipped the photo over. Scrawled in shaky handwriting were 4 words. Only the marked return. I threw the box across the attic. I wanted to burn the damn thing, but something stopped me. That phrase, it clung to my thoughts like cobwebs. The marked return. What did it mean? Marked how? That night, I took off my shirt to shower and caught a glimpse of something in the mirror. A mark, just below my left shoulder blade. A faint, almost invisible shape, like an old burn or scar. A circle with lines radiating outward, like a crude sun or an eye. I didn't remember getting it. It wasn't there before. It couldn't have been. I barely slept. The next morning I called Clara. Clara's an old friend. We grew up 2 streets apart. She left for college and never came back. Smart girl, but we kept in touch. I told her about the photo, the mark, the dreams. I left out the part about the man at the tree. There was a pause on the line. Then she said something I'll never forget. "Danny, you disappeared when we were 16. My mouth went dry. You were gone for 2 weeks. Nobody knew where you went. There were flyers, police, search parties. I thought you'd been taken. Then you came back one morning, walked into town like nothing happened. You didn't remember anything. You said you had been hiking with a friend, but there was something off about you. Why didn't you ever tell me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "You told us never to speak of it again. You begged us." My head spun, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. "Clara," I said, "what else do you remember?" There was a long silence. Then, "You said something the night you came back, over and over like a prayer. I never told anyone, not even my mom." I gripped the phone tighter. "What did I say?" "You kept whispering, 'They let me go.' I didn't look back." A chill ran down my spine. She stayed on the line with me a while longer, but I barely remember what we said. My mind was unraveling thread by thread. I knew now that something happened in those woods when I was a kid, something I made myself forget, or was made to forget. But it didn't matter anymore, because they remembered me, and they were waiting. I didn't go to work the next day, or the day after that. I stopped answering calls, even Clara's. I spent most of my time sitting by the window, staring out at the woods. Waiting. For what? I don't know. Maybe to see him again. Maybe to remember. The dreams didn't stop. They got stronger, more detailed. The people in the line had names now. Naomi, Ezra, Caleb. I don't know how I knew them. They never spoke, but I knew them, like old friends, like people I'd lost. And every night I'd wake up with dirt under my fingernails. One morning I found pine needles in my bed, not from the yard. These were long, dark, sharp, like something out of the deep woods, the kind you don't find this close to town. That was the morning I finally gave in. Something inside me said, "It's time." I packed a small bag, flashlight, water, a first aid kit I hadn't touched in years. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I knew where I had to go. The boundary tree. It stood there, same as always, twisted, watching. The wind barely stirred the leaves, but the woods felt alive, like something had been waiting for me to return. I stepped past the tree. The change was immediate. You ever walk into a part of the woods where the sound just dies? No birds, no wind, just stillness? That's what it felt like crossing into a sealed-off room. My ears popped, my breath came slower. I followed the faint trail I'd seen in my dreams. At first, it didn't feel real, more like muscle memory than sight. I turned when I felt I should. I stepped over roots I didn't see. It was like I was remembering the path as I walked it. After maybe an hour, I found the stones. Just like the dream. A clearing in the woods, 10 of them, arranged in a rough circle, moss-covered, old, carved with symbols that twitched in the corner of my eye, like they didn't want to be seen too clearly. The air there felt heavy, like being underwater or on the verge of sleep. I stepped inside the circle, and everything changed. Not suddenly, not like a jump cut. It was gradual, like sand slipping through your fingers. The woods shifted. The trees stretched taller, their bark darker. The light dimmed, though the sun was still up. And the smell, it was overwhelming. Damp rot, wildflowers, and something faintly metallic. Like blood. I turned to leave the clearing and saw that the path behind me was gone. There was only forest. Endless. Quiet. Watching. Panic flared in my chest. I fumbled with my phone. No signal, no GPS, just static and a flicker of battery. And then, a sound. Not loud, just present, like a low hum in the bones of the earth. It came from deeper in the woods. And with it, movement, walking slowly. I ducked behind one of the stones, heart racing. I didn't know if they could see me. I wasn't sure. I wanted to find out. They passed through the clearing. 7 of them. All barefoot, dressed in dark, tattered clothes, faces blank, eyes unfocused, like sleepwalkers. One of them had hair like straw and walked with a limp. Another held something close to their chest, a bundle of twigs, just like in the photo. I watched them disappear into the trees, heading somewhere I couldn't see. But one of them, a man near the back, stopped, turned, and looked right at me. His face was thin, pale, lips cracked, but his eyes were mine. Not similar. It was like staring into a mirror that had forgotten it was glass. He tilted his head, then slowly raised a finger to his lips. Then he walked on. I couldn't move. Could barely breathe. I don't remember getting back home. One minute I was staring at that clearing, the next I was on my front porch. The sun was setting, my bag was gone. So were my boots. My feet were bare, covered in dirt. The next few days were a blur. I didn't leave the house, not even to check the mailbox. The photo from the attic was gone. The mark on my back faded. But the dreams came every night, stronger, more real. And one detail kept repeating. The path doesn't just take you in. It takes pieces of you with it. I started finding things in my house I didn't recognize. A child's shoe under the couch, a pendant in the sink, a drawing pinned to my fridge, crude, done in charcoal, 7 stick figures under a dark sun. My name written in the corner, in handwriting that wasn't mine. Something was bleeding through. Something was coming back with me. I wasn't alone anymore. I didn't see them, not at first, but I felt them, the presence in the hall, the cold breath near my ear when I turned off the lights, the way the shadows shifted when I wasn't looking directly at them, and the hum. Always the hum. It came at night, low, droning, like the sound of wind moving through bone. I could feel it in the walls, in my teeth, a frequency not meant for human ears. The kind of sound you hear only once you've been changed. I started sleeping in the living room, surrounded by lights. Flashlight in my hand, phone clutched like a talisman, but the battery drained every time I fell asleep, no matter how full it was. And the lights? They'd flicker. Sometimes they'd just die altogether, one after the other, in complete silence. I started seeing reflections that didn't match. In mirrors, in windows, in the screen of my blacked-out TV. I'd be sitting still and my reflection would blink or tilt its head just a second too late. Once, I swore I saw my own mouth move before I spoke, whispering something soundless. Something with too many syllables. I wanted help. I wanted to talk to Clara again, but I couldn't bring myself to call. A sick part of me felt like telling her would pull her into it. Like this thing, whatever it was, could hear through words, and it was waiting for me to cross the line again. So I did what scared people do. I tried to make sense of it. I started digging into Old Town records, archives, obituaries, unsolved missing persons reports. I drove to the Mason Hill Historical Society, just a gray little building off Main Street, run by a woman named Betty, who smelled like old books and wore 3 sets of reading glasses at once. When I asked her if there had ever been disappearances tied to the woods, she gave me a look, the kind you give someone who just said something they weren't supposed to remember. "You shouldn't go asking about the Echo place," she said. I hadn't mentioned that name. I asked her what she meant. She hesitated, then slowly pulled a box from beneath the desk. It was filled with yellowed clippings, notes, handwritten journal entries. Dozens of names, dozens of dates, every one of them marked unresolved. Some dating back to the early 1900s, some as recent as 2011. "They all went missing near the woods," Betty said. "Most of them last seen walking near the boundary." I sifted through the pages, and my stomach turned cold. Naomi Carter, Ezra Flint, Caleb Dorr. Names from my dreams. Names that shouldn't have been real. "How did you," she started, but then stopped herself. "No, I don't want to know. Just take this, and if you go back there..." She handed me a bundle of string and bone, some kind of charm, smelled like sage and rust. "Don't follow the song." I left without asking more. I couldn't. She looked like she'd start screaming if I said another word. That night I dreamed again, only it wasn't like the others. This time I was awake. I could feel the sheets, hear the hum of the fridge downstairs, but I couldn't move. Sleep paralysis, only it wasn't. There was someone standing at the foot of my bed, tall, shadow-wrapped, not moving, just breathing. The breath sounded wrong, like the woods inhaling through hollow reeds. Then it spoke, not aloud, inside. "You open the door, you belong to us." My body snapped upright, gasping, bed soaked, lights dead. And on the wall, above my bed, written in sap and ash, was a symbol. The same one from my shoulder. Only this time, it was fresh. I left the house that night. Didn't pack, didn't turn off the lights, just walked. Down the road, through the cold, to the boundary tree. The path was waiting, and this time I didn't hesitate. I followed it for what felt like hours. The trees closed in, the air grew thick. My flashlight died within minutes, but the path glowed faintly, a sickly silver, like moonlight on water. And then I found it. The Echo Place. A wide sunken glade where the trees bowed inward, their roots knotted around stones like fingers clenching old secrets. At the center stood a massive stone pillar, black and wet-looking, humming low and constant. The air around it shimmered. And there, around its base, were dozens of people, standing in a loose circle, breathing as one. Their skin was pale, some had moss growing from their fingers, others wept dark fluid from their eyes. And in the center, facing the stone, stood him. The man in the coat, the one I'd seen at the boundary. Only this time he turned to face me, and I saw what wasn't a face at all. Just a hole. Not bloody, not mangled. Just an emptiness. A void where a face should be. And inside it, movement, shapes, like hands trying to reach out of nothing. He raised one long arm and pointed to the circle. The others parted, making a space for me. My legs moved on their own. I stepped into the ring, and the stone began to sing. You ever hear something so beautiful it breaks you? That's what the stone sang like. Not music, not really. It was a memory. Or a feeling of one, like a lullaby your mother hummed before she left, a campfire story whispered through generations. It reached into places you didn't know could ache. And when I stood inside the circle, it sang to me. The others didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't blink, just shadows shaped like people. Their mouths parted, eyes glassy, as if they'd forgotten how to be anything else. And that thing in the coat, that hollow shape, he stepped closer. I couldn't move. I couldn't want to. And in that moment, I remembered. Not the dream, not the trail, the truth. 16 years old. I'd been dared to camp in the woods overnight. Nothing serious, just a stupid teenage game. I went alone, stayed near the boundary tree, just beyond sight of the town. But at some point after midnight, I heard the humming. And I followed it. God help me, I followed it. I wandered into the woods barefoot, not even aware I'd taken my shoes off. I found others there, people like me, lost, dazed, dreaming with their eyes wide open. Some of them smiling, some of them weeping. And at the center, the stone, the man in the coat. He asked a question, though not in words. Just an idea, placed softly behind the eyes. Will you stay? Aya had said yes, and I stayed. For 2 weeks, I was part of them, part of the forest. I drank from cold springs that tasted of metal and ash. I knelt in circles and sang to the roots. I buried my name in the soil so something else could wear it. But in the end, I ran. One night, I looked up at the stars and remembered who I was, or maybe who I used to be, and I ran like my soul was on fire. They didn't chase me. They let me go, and I never looked back. But now I had returned. Now I was theirs. The circle tightened around me. The man in the coat leaned close, his faceless head brushing mine. And he whispered in a voice like roots splitting stone, "You came back. You remembered. You are marked." The others began to sway. Mouths opened in unison. The humming returned, louder, deeper. It wasn't just music now. It was summoning. The forest around us moved. Trees groaned, soil cracked. Hands pushed up from the dirt. Dozens, maybe hundreds, clawing at the ground as if trying to return from some place far beneath memory. Not corpses, not quite. Just remnants. Leftovers. Pieces of people who said yes and never looked back. I felt the song moving through me, tearing me open, making room. Something wanted in, something old. I screamed, not aloud. Inside, a single desperate thought. Not yet, not me, not again. And for a breath, a sliver of silence, the circle paused. The man in the coat stopped moving. And I ran. I don't remember how I escaped the glade. Only the sound behind me, that low, relentless hum cracking into a scream, like the forest itself was mourning my absence. I burst through the boundary tree just as the sun was rising, collapsed onto the gravel. The air was warm. The world was quiet. My feet were raw, my skin stained, my body older than when I entered. I never found the path again, not in daylight, not in dreams. But things followed. For weeks, I found symbols scratched into my doorframe, stones stacked on my porch, a smear of sap across my bedroom window. Sometimes I'd wake with leaves in my mouth. Sometimes I'd wake to find I wasn't alone in the bed, just pressure beside me. Cold, breathing, gone when I turned the light on. I moved out of that house, started over, new job, new town, no trees nearby. But some nights, I still hear the hum when the world goes quiet, when my reflection forgets to match me, when I dream of walking barefoot down a trail that curves inward forever. They remember me. That wraps up tonight's pasta. If your lights flicker, don't blame the wiring until the next shadow creeps in. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. It helps more than you know. And if you liked the story, don't forget to hit the like button. In the comments below, share your own horror experience. I'll be reading after midnight. Good night. See you again tomorrow.